This episode of the Western Outdoor News Podcast is brought to you by the Western Outdoor News digital subscription. If you'd like to read Western Outdoor News weekly on your iPad or your PC, all you have to do is visit wonews.com, sign up for a digital subscription, and a show special, I'll give you $5 off. All you have to do is type in promo code 5OFF1. That's FIVOFFWON, and you'll receive $5 off your 1-year digital-only subscription, making it less than $20 for the year of Western Outdoor News. So what are you waiting for? Visit wonews.com to claim this deal.
They did not know what to do in some sense at the very beginning. The last time we experienced this kind of tsunami is, that's a long time ago, in 1883.
This week, we've got the January 21st issue of Western Outdoor News. It's available digitally right now, and I know what you're thinking. Today is January 19th. That means that you can read the issue before the issue date of January 21st. It's almost like that show, Early Edition. Does anybody ever watch that show? I don't know. I did. Anyway, January 21st issue of Western Outdoor News is available now at wonews.com, but let's run through some of the big stories that we see in the paper this week. So, of course, the recent tsunami was big news across the West Coast, and we've got the latest damage and impact reports from our on-the-scene correspondents. And, of course, that's the main theme of this issue today, or of this podcast today. More on this with our main guest that we have, Dr. Harry Yeh, on the show later on. Also, in Western Outdoor News this week, we've got the great Chetco steelhead action, and the sculpin bite that's been going on is limit-style fishing up and down the West Coast here. We've got all the fish counts and tackle tips and landing reports in this week's issue. On top of that, we have this 10-pound-plus largemouth bass from Lake Paris. It actually ended up weighing in at 11 pounds, 14 ounces out of Lake Paris. On page 2, we've got all the details and some of the angler's tactics that he used to land this double-digit largemouth. The first round of the 2022 Saltwater Bass Series took place last weekend in Newport Harbor, and of course we've got the full report from Jerry and some of the tactics used for some of these winning teams for the Saltwater Bass Series. We've also got the latest hunting reports and bird counts, and we have a really interesting feature on how to avoid the bubonic plague, something I didn't think I'd be reading here today. For anyone looking to turn their sights to hunting land-based critters or creatures over the coming months, it's a really interesting piece about how to avoid possible diseases. So check that out in this week's issue of Western Outdoor News. Of course, we've got the usual tips, features, reports, and columns. All of that. You can get all of that for only $19.95 if you use the code 5OFF1 when you check out for the digital edition of Western Outdoor News. Of course, our print edition is available. That could be delivered to your mailbox as well, but this special offer only applies to the digital version, and the link to claim that offer is in the show notes today. On to our main topic today. Of course, it's going to be the tsunami coverage here on the west coast of the United States. You might have seen some of the footage from Santa Cruz. There was some excessive flooding. Of course, there was a lot of water being pulled out of our harbors here in California. So a lot of people were wondering, hey, what happened? What caused this? And why did some harbors get affected more than others? So we spoke to an expert. We spoke to Dr. Harry Yeh out of Oregon State University. He is an expert on all things tsunamis, and he shed some light on not only this tsunami, but what we could possibly prepare for in the future. And I also asked him something that I had been wondering for a long time. Is the coast of California protected by our chain of islands, like the Channel Islands and Catalina Island? Are we protected from a potential tsunami if one bigger one were to hit the West Coast? And his answer actually shocked me. So stay tuned. I hate to tease you like that, but this has been one of the most impressive interviews that we've been able to get here at the Western Outdoor News Podcast. So give it a listen, and if you have any questions, send us a line at podcast@wonews.com.
there are still lots of unknown. I'd like to know what is going on for this particular event. But let me tell you, this particular tsunami originated from huge volcanic eruption. Actually, it's collapse of the caldera is really different from other tsunamis created by earthquake. The last time we experienced this kind of tsunami is, that's long time ago in Krakatoa. I think it's
wow.
1883, Krakatoa.
I remember hearing about it in school.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So at that time, there's a lots of effect. Lots of people died nearby, and the entire world was affected by some more or less. But it was 19th century. There was no good recordings. There's no good technology and knowledge at that time. So this event occurred in Tonga is sort of extraordinary. And as a scientist, there's a huge opportunity for the rare event which happened on this planet. Let's see. Should I talk about this event a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, because of this event is different. Tsunami warnings issued by NOAA is a little bit different. It was sort of they did not know what to do in some sense at the very beginning. I just tried to check what was going on yesterday about the NOAA's warning system. It happened at the Pacific time, January 14th, 8:30 in the evening. That's what happened at that time. And there's no warning or no nothing until about 3:30 in the morning in January 15th. At that time, they issued information statement. And then you still have to wait 2 more hours, like a 5:30, that the NOAA's Tsunami Warning Center issued an advisory. So that's why it's quite a bit different. It is not prepared event. It's not originated from the big earthquake. So that is the things which is different from other event.
Mm-hmm. So because it wasn't kind of sparked by an earthquake, is that what made it more of a struggle to figure out how to properly inform people about what happened?
Yes, that is correct. Okay, if you have the volcanic eruption, or if you have some islands, landslide or something like this, we anticipate that tsunami will not propagate far away. It will be very much the effect's going to be very much contained locally. It doesn't propagate in a long distance.
Oh, I see.
That's the way we understood, because of the source is small compared to the earthquake source. Mm-hmm. So in that case, that the effect will be attenuated very quickly if you go far away. So that's why I think that they did not issue the advisory immediately, because they thought it's not really a problem. Of course, there's some other volcanic eruptions happened before, small scale. And for that case, indeed, effect is contained locally. It doesn't propagate far away. This is different. This is huge event, just like a Krakatoa. So there must be some sort of a threshold, I think. If it becomes so big, then phenomenon is going to be different. That's my thinking on this. Mm-hmm. And another interesting which we observed is certainly there's a significant tsunami in the United States, right? We saw some kind of videos.
Oh, yes.
And there's a significant tsunamis in Japan and then in Chile. And then not too much in Hawaii. And I haven't seen so much things in the New Zealand or Australia. That's strange here, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, that's a huge question. That why were there so many different reactions to this tsunami?
Yeah, not only for that, New Zealand and Australia is much, much closer to the source.
Yeah, you would think that they would be more impacted for sure.
Yeah, compared to the Japan and the Chile and the United States, much farther. So the group of people sort of are discussing last couple of days. So what's going on kind of stuff. There might be, still we do not know exactly what happened, but there might be some kind of shock waves created by volcanic eruption in the atmosphere play some role.
Oh, interesting.
That is also quite interesting. And then those shock waves, actually they call that the acoustic gravity wave. It's a very, very strange wave, but it's sort of a wave trapped on the surface. And that wave sort of propagate entire globe. And actually those pressure, atmospheric pressure was measured in the Mediterranean Sea and the Caribbean Sea as well. So that wave sort of propagating entire globe. So the question is,
and that was more atmospheric pressure than it was actual the ocean water itself. It was more atmospheric. So in the actual atmosphere was affected as well as the ocean water.
Yeah, and those atmospheric wave, it might be the one which create ocean waves. Very small but very large area for that.
Oh, okay.
So that, atmospheric shock wave is the one which create a deformation of the ocean. And then on top of that, that creates a volcanic eruption itself creates a large wave, large tsunami from the source. And everything is sort of mixed together. And okay, let me say, if you're going to have some kind of small wave propagating in front of the long, large wave, eventually large wave catch up to the smaller wave, and it becomes larger wave. And there's a speculation that might think it's happened. I guess it is very hard to explain for that, but I should say this way. It's a very complex phenomena. It's not just for that there's simple tsunami happening from the source. They might be created by the atmospheric shock wave as well.
Okay.
And the combination might be important. So in order to predict the effects from such kind of event is very difficult. And another thing which I saw is sort of intriguing is the volcanic eruption for this event shows lots of vapor rather than the black smoke. Whenever you see those satellite pictures, it's a volcanic eruption. Those stuff is white rather than black.
Yeah, what does that mean?
So that means there's a vapor. The seawater is suddenly vaporized because of the hot lava or hot eruptions. So that creates the extra oomph for the atmospheric waves.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, this is very, very sort of a complex phenomena. And we can learn something, very strange things happening on this globe, which we do not know. And the next several months, I guess lots of people talk about, in the scientific community, talk about what happened for this. And then perhaps we might be able to predict such kind of stuff in the future event.
Or at least be more prepared to notify people about what to expect after a volcano under the water like this erupts. Right. So let's get to kind of another question here, specifically on the west coast of the United States. You kind of talked about it a little bit, but why were we seeing some harbors affected more than others? For example, Santa Cruz, which I know is a south-facing harbor, actually ended up getting flooded. Nothing too devastating, but I mean, it was still flooded quite a bit. While some of our south-facing harbors here in Southern California saw very minimal change at all. How is that explained?
Well, one thing we have to know is tsunamis. Well, even though that originated by volcanic eruption or created by earthquakes, tsunamis are different from other waves. That the wave length or wave period is quite a bit different from the waves generated by wind forces like hurricanes and those kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So this means that the wavelength is sometimes it's comparable to the topography or bathymetry of the coastal lines. So it's going to be more sensitive to react with the coastal features compared to the other waves. That might be the one explanation, and that might be one thing I sort of mentioned earlier. You simply cannot predict what happened by the tsunamis from your everyday experience. You experienced from the wind waves, like wind waves coming like every 10 seconds and 20 seconds. Those behaviors will be quite a bit different from the waves created by the tsunamis. And that might be the reason why Santa Cruz has a large wave response compared to the other places. That's one of the explanations. And, it's react more closely to the bathymetry too. Because when wave is longer, the wave can see the sea bottom. If you have a wind waves, like a 20-second wave, if you go further deep regions, the wave cannot see the sea bottoms. So they're not going to be affected by sea bottoms. However, tsunami can be very sensitive to what happened for the condition of the sea bottoms. So that creates the focusing effect sometimes to the one particular area. So key things we should know here is length scale is quite a bit different from the everyday waves which we experienced. Mm-hmm. Is that sort of understandable? If you have questions, just let me know. I'll try to explain to you a little bit more.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, and I guess here's another kind of a follow-up question to that. I know some of the warnings that we got sent to our cell phones were saying that the wave, might be 1 to 2 feet, and I know that was met with a lot of sarcastic comments on the internet. And thankfully, there wasn't too much property damage, or there were no injuries that we've seen reported here. But when you see a warning that a tsunami wave might be 1 to 2 feet, is that something to be concerned about, or is that something that should be or could be possibly excused?
Let me tell you my experience, which I observed in 2004 Indian tsunami. Right after that, I went to India. And one of the village was sort of devastated. Lots of people sort of killed, but run-up wave height, I should say that flow depth on that beach was about 3 to 4 feet. Okay, 3 to 4 feet is, it's not really deep. The tsunami is different from the waves, right? If the 3 to 4 feet waves, yeah, of course, those waves can push you to the different locations. Mm-hmm. But immediately after that, the wave changed the directions. So you can survive. It's not really a problem. But if you have a 3 to 4 feet tsunami flow, then that flow is going to continuously push your body inland. Mm-hmm. And during that time, the body is going to be, you're not going to be able to standing up. It's going to be fall.
Yeah, because there's not a break in between waves like we might see at the beach.
And then continually pushing to the inland. And then on that village in the India, lots of people drowned, even though that the flow depth is 3 to 4 feet. So that's the one thing, it is different, tsunami and the regular waves.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a problem, right? I mean, people want to surf on the tsunamis because it's going to be talking about people want to surf on the tsunamis. The problem is you can start to surf and it's never stop.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to go to the real problem. Surfers going to be pushing to the street and in the town, and eventually it could smash into the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
That is a problem.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's just no stopping. It's just an endless push instead of a wave and then a break and then a wave.
The important things I'd like to sort of try to get across here is you simply cannot make a proper judgment from the everyday experience for tsunamis.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of the reason I was sort of fascinated. I tried to study on this topic. Lots of surprises.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of surprises with human nature too, because when that warning went out about this tsunami, I was shocked, or maybe not as shocked as maybe I should have been, but there were people ignoring the warning and heading out on kayaks, going down to their harbor to see the action, so to speak. And of course, it's a good thing that it didn't end up worse than it was for us here in the United States. But the big question is, what if? And, what if you were trapped out there in a kayak because, you thought it would be no big deal, but, here comes the big deal coming up the horizon there. How should people react when they get these notices about a potential tsunami coming?
Well, as I said, that the tsunami, even though tsunami generated by earthquake is sort of not accurately predicted. Good example is 2011 Japan tsunamis. The tsunami warning was issued. Initially, it's a 3-meter height. It's very large. Mm-hmm. And then there are lots of tsunami shelters, tsunami safe havens. People just evacuate in safe havens. The stays there. And someplace, those people are perished because the height is much, much larger than the predicted.
Oh, okay.
So, even though if you have a warning, and if you say this is a safe place, you should follow those instructions, but do not trust it. You have to make a judgment by yourself to save your own life. Mm-hmm. If you still want to live. So,
well, because like you said, if this type of a volcanic eruption hasn't happened in so long, how accurate could the warning system be? In this case, it ended up being pretty accurate, but like you said, you really never know, and it's hard to trust that warning system.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that warning system and the prediction is much, much better these days because we have sensors in the deep sea in the Pacific Oceans. So actually they can measure those waves before they arrive on the land. But still, it's still lots of things is unknown. Like for instance, we discussed in the amplification of the wave in the Santa Cruz. This must be a caused by some bathymetry and topography effect, but still this is not that accurate. Mm-hmm. As I say, it is different from the wind waves. That is the thing.
Yes. So something that we've kind of always heard maybe in Southern California here is that if there was maybe a larger tsunami, that the Southern California coast might be protected by Catalina Island and the whole island chain that we have down here in Southern California. Is there any truth to that the islands might potentially protect the mainland during a larger tsunami?
That is not true. That is not correct. That's a good point you mentioned. If you have an island, that the shadow zone of the island, we think wave action is attenuated and smaller. Sometimes the tsunami create opposite. That's interesting, isn't it?
That is interesting.
Because of the island and because of the tsunami's wavelength is so long, the waves gonna be wrapped around the island and merged behind the island together.
Oh, wow.
Creating amplifications. Let me just mention a few things though. If waves is so long, like a tide, and if you have a small island, the wave is simply going up and down. Nothing changes. Mm-hmm. If the wave is short, just like a wind waves or hurricane waves, that the wave's going to be braked in front of the island and the shadow zone of the island is calm. That is not the case. That is not the case always for tsunamis. When tsunami's wavelength is comparable to the island, sometimes waves can be enhanced behind the island, and which we observed before in our measurements in the actual tsunamis in the Indonesia and somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. So that calm water on the inside between the island and the mainland, that would actually amplify the waves. That's really interesting.
Because, that's a possibility, yes.
Yeah, wow. And so the waves would wrap around the island and meet in that calm water to actually amplify the wave?
That is correct. You're going to wrap around to one side and you're going to have another wave wrap around the other side and meeting those waves together behind the island.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's what we observed for a long time ago.
Yeah. Hey, I'm sure some people were just trying to stress a little bit less about it, and that doesn't help. But hey, you can't hide the science on that, I guess. Yeah. So how has this been studied? And let me know if you have the expertise in this area. How does this affect marine wildlife? When we see this water rushing out and then rushing back in, how does it affect the wildlife in the ocean?
I do not know exactly, but one thing I should mention that here is, as I say, wave behavior is different from other wave conditions. It's quite a bit different from the hurricane waves. So the marine life is not really prepared for that kind of loading. Does not prepare for that kind of flow conditions. Mm-hmm. So they may surprise and they may recover okay. I do not know. But one example for this is I should mention that one of the narrow bay in Japan and the 1960 Chilean tsunami, that's a long time ago. It's about 17,000 kilometers away from Chile to Japan. Mm-hmm. And that wave get into the narrow bay. And that tsunami sort of erode the bay bottom by 10 meters. That's not going to happen unless there's a tsunamis. So, if the sea bottom is always calm, and then the condition is sort of made of the soft sediments, mm-hmm. Then if tsunami comes, then you're going to get the substantial flow that creates the sediment transport and the erosions on the bed.
Yes.
So, the condition was well protected all the time, and suddenly there's some kind of different kind of loading, different kind of conditions happening at the sea bottom, certainly the reaction of the sea bottom will be different. So
so it depends on what the actual seafloor is composed of, because if it does have that soft sediment and that water gets pulled out, if that sediment has never really seen those types of flows, then it essentially would disappear.
Yeah, especially if it's a deep bed. If the shallower part is, you're going to have a flow all the time. So marine conditions, some species sort of cope with those kind of conditions all the time. But if it's deep enough, like maybe like 50-meter deep, 150 feet deep, those kind of place, usually the condition is calm. It does not affected by the waves. Then all of a sudden tsunami comes, then that is not really prepared for that kind of forcings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned this to me before. It is because this volcano was, or because this tsunami was caused by a volcanic eruption, as opposed to an earthquake. What's kind of the goal going ahead with this kind of, I guess we can use it like a case study now going forward. How is this going to be studied, and what could we potentially learn from this volcanic eruption?
Yeah. Well, scientifically, this is a geophysical sense. It is a very interesting topic. Because this combined that the atmospheric condition and the ocean wave conditions as well, and it affects entire globe. So that's an important things we should know what happened on this. Well, for instance, this is volcanic eruptions. What kind of volcanic eruption is the one which creating this kind of the tsunamis? That is important things to know. Some of the small volcanic eruption, probably, it doesn't matter. As I said earlier, if you have a volcanic tsunami created by volcanic eruptions, source is so small, so effect of the wave will be dispersed or radiate much quicker. So far away from the source, the tsunami effect is not that important. But we learned from this event that is not the case. If you have a huge eruptions, for this type of the caldera collapse under ocean, that our common sense, our common understanding of the tsunami generations, propagations, and also effect on the shoreline will be quite a bit different. So we need to learn such kind of stuff so that we can prepare for the future event. Another future event we should know, we should study is, for instance, that the meteorite impact onto the ocean. That's possibility, and I think we should study those kind of event so that at least we can survive in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so going back to the volcanic eruption, how predictable is a volcanic eruption, especially one that happens under the ocean?
Okay, if it's not under the ocean, if it's not the remote area, just like a eruption of the Mount St. Helens, for instance, we could predict. We can give you a warning a days before, the days ahead of the time. In that, for this Tonga case, I'm not sure if this one was predicted or not. But every time you have volcanic eruptions, prior to the eruptions, there will be some sign for the change in the surface, Earth's surface, and there might be some kind of tremor, small tremors. and we should be able to sort of predict. But for this event, I do not know they was predicted or not. But this is different from an earthquake. The earthquake, you cannot predict ahead of time.
No.
But volcanic eruptions, you could, about several days ahead of that event.
Mm-hmm.
So that's...
So even if it's under the ocean, it could be predicted several days before, or no, or
okay, if we have a sensors, yes.
Okay.
If we have a sensors, that we have a very dense sensors on the land, on the United States or elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Tonga, there might be some, but I do not know they have a very strong sensors on that place.
What do these sensors under the ocean, what do they look like?
Okay, the one we have off the Pacific Northwest is they have a pressure sensors. They also have try to detect the movement of the seafloor. So they try to predict what is going on the seafloor. Thereby, they try to understand how the plate is moving.
Does it look like? I mean, is it the size of a small computer, or is it the size of a tree? How big are these things?
Oh, I do not know how big it is, but I can guess. The size is probably a meter or less.
Oh, okay.
Sensor itself, sensor must be cased. You're gonna put the sensor in deep in the water, so you have to case those sensor to be protected. So probably less than meters, those kind of stuff. Only problem here is how you gonna send those data to the human beings actually.
Is it traveled through satellite? But that probably wouldn't work very well going through water. How is that information gathered?
Some of those in the United States, NOAA has some tsunami sensors. They call DART buoy, DART.
Okay.
They have a sea floor pressure sensors. Acoustically, those signal is send it to the buoy on the sea surface. The buoy is going to send a signal to satellite, and the satellite send the signal to the recording people on this. So that's the system we have in the DART buoy. In Japan, they have hardwired sensors. They have I don't know, maybe 1,000 kilometer long hardwired placed in the seafloor. So rather than using that satellite, they can send the signal through the cable.
Directly, okay.
Directly, but it's much more expensive, and the maintenance is a real problem. Actually, maintenance is a problem for both sides.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I think that this is a huge difference compared to, say, 30 years ago. We have sensors. Thanks to the NOAA's effort, they actually try to measure what's going on in the deep water. And, that the things going on in the deep water is not, it's for us, which is real. We do not know what's going on in the deep water bottom. Some people say that we know more knowledge on the Mars surface compared to the bottom of the ocean. I think that is correct. But about 30 years ago, we did put those kind of tsunami sensors everywhere under the Pacific Ocean, and some of those are in the Indian Ocean as well. So those are huge advancement for this kind of event.
Okay. So for people listening and people reading this in Western Outdoor News, how if they wanted to follow along with the research that's being done after the events of the Tonga volcano, where should they go as a resource for finding kind of the latest information about the research that's being done?
I do not know at this moment, but this just started. And this is, as I say, extremely intriguing problem geophysically. So as far as the scientific finding is concerned, there will be lots of things will be reported in the American Geophysical Union. That's probably the place that's going to happen. And then time to time, the finding in the American Geophysical Union or some publication in the Nature magazine or Science magazine, those can be reported and then picked up by the newspapers sometimes. So I don't know if the people can proactively, unless people can proactively search those informations. I think those findings going to be distributed by some of the scientific article.
Again, a huge thank you to Dr. Ye for joining the show and shedding some light on this kind of once-in-a-lifetime, hopefully, experience that we all had this past weekend with the tsunami. If you had any additional questions that I might have missed, feel free to send them over to us. You can DM us on Instagram or Facebook, or you can send an email to podcast@wonews.com. For now, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining the show. Thanks for listening to the show. I guess you could join the show if you wanted.